Boy, do we have a show for you today. Mr. Steve Sheetz is on the podcast. If you are from Pennsylvania or anywhere on the East Coast, you know about Sheetz convenience stores. If you don't, they won Convenience Store of the Year several years running. They've done amazing things in our area, not only building the greatest convenience store ever, but also helping out in the area, contributing their time, money, knowledge to helping central Pennsylvania and a lot of Pennsylvania grow in itself. So I got to thank Steve, number one, for being a part of many of those projects. Steve joined the Sheetz family as a professional, as an active employee back in the 60s when his brother Bob was running the stores. So Steve took over and helped bring Sheetz to where it is today, which is a multi-million-dollar, I don't even know how much money Sheetz is worth, but it is a gigantic organization that has so many stores throughout our area. So if you don't know a whole lot about Steve Sheetz, I'll give you like a brief bio. He has been the Family Council chairman at Sheetz since October of 2013. He was the chairman at Sheetz Incorporated until October of 2013. And he's just done incredible things for our area. So I can't thank him enough, being somebody who grew up in central Pennsylvania, for all of the things that he has done for our area. But this is a great conversation that is spanning decades. So there's tons of experience involved. Any entrepreneur, anybody owning their own business or wanting to run their own business, one of the biggest things I get hung up on is like fear and doubt and taking risks, right? And Steve, his brother Bob, they were masters at this sort of thing. And when you take the risks and when you push the fear aside and just go for it, you can see amazing things happen. And you can see that through Steve Sheetz. That's why I am so pumped up to have this conversation for you today on the show. Before we get there, we got to talk about our sponsors. Shout out to Harlequin Pepper Yoga in downtown Hollidaysburg, Pennsylvania. So at 320 Allegheny Street in Hollidaysburg, Harlequin Pepper Yoga is vinyasa yoga rooted in science, focusing on functional movement and anatomical alignment. You can find Harlequin Pepper Yoga in the App Store or Google Play, or on Facebook and Instagram at Harlequin Pepper Yoga. Here's the awesome part. Aaron, who runs the place, said if anybody comes in and uses the code word ROBZ, either walking through the door or in the App Store or on Google Play, you can get 1 month for free toward a 6-month or a year membership. 6-month or a year membership, 1 month for free using the code word ROBZ. How cool is that? Also, the Clay Cup, 1304 11th Avenue in Altoona, the Clay Cup on Facebook and Instagram. Coffee, tea, and creativity, pottery, painting, watercolor classes. It's like the ultimate hangout spot for central Pennsylvania. And also to Juice, that's Joos. So Juice is located 517 Allegheny Street in Hollidaysburg at The Juice Bar. Cold pressed juice and smoothies, smoothie bowls and bone broth, all that goodness. Now let's get this very special show started.
This is Rob Z Radio.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the podcast. We are here in the Catalyst Space Studios, downtown Altoona, Pennsylvania, with a very special guest this morning, or afternoon, or evening, whenever you're listening to this episode. Steve Sheetz is here. Steve, thank you so much for being in the house.
Yeah, you bet. Glad to be here, Rob.
This is amazing that I got you in the studio to sit down and talk business, talk life. How are you?
Well, I'm doing good. It's a beautiful day, so I need to get out and enjoy it.
Yeah, so you want to try to wrap this up then quick. Is that
there
what you're
you
saying?
go. Doesn't have to be quick. No, it doesn't have to be quick. Just concise.
So first of all, if you're not from the central Pennsylvania area, if you don't know what Sheetz is, if you're not from the East Coast, I guess, and you're not sure what Sheetz is, I guess would be the situation where those are the only people who wouldn't know. You guys have been around since, when was the initial Sheetz name introduced? The 50s, the 60s?
Well, actually, my father had 5 stores in the 40s, what he called Sheetz Dairy Store.
Sheetz Dairy Store, yes.
And then my brother, Bob, took over 1. That was really the start, 1952, when he took over the first store. So that's when we trace our history to.
And you came in the 60s?
I started in 1960. We had 1 store. I was 12. There was 8 children in our family. And at the age of 12, we were expected to go to work. So we either worked one of our father's 5 stores, or the dairy, or we worked down at the Bob's store. So I worked at the dairy for a couple of weeks. That was hard work. Plus, I didn't want to get up at 3 o'clock in the morning.
Milk the cows.
Well, we had the dairy was down on 4th Avenue and 24th Street. So we got in the trucks or loaded trucks.
Yeah.
And I want to tell you something. At 3:30 in the morning is not a lot of fun. So anyway, I chose to work with Bob. My hours were 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. Monday to Friday. I was in 7th grade. It was in the summer. Wow. So I worked 25 hours, and he handed me $20 bill every Friday, 80 cents an hour. And I looked forward to that $20 because I loved to shoot pool, play cards, even at the age of 12. So I was happy.
Well, working at 12 too. You started everything pretty young.
Yeah, I mean today I look at my grandchildren. I can't imagine them working at 12. It was a different era, you know.
I started at 15, so I was only a couple of years off. But I was in radio. That's not really work necessarily. Yeah. Sitting there staring at a microphone.
It's talking. You know, talk.
Something. But so back in the 60s when you got started and you were working with Bob, who was your older brother by what, like 12 years? Was he your...
Bob's 14 years.
14 years, okay.
He's doing well. Yeah, he's in good health.
I think the thing that going through the book and just dissecting it, the thing I got out of it the most, the thing that always resonates with me, and we were talking about this a second ago, is just fearlessness and being able to go in and understand. You guys said right at the start of the book, like, this is America, and you realize at a certain point that in America you can do anything. So
anything you want, you're in control, man.
So you guys did anything. I mean, you did, right? You went for it.
Yeah, we did. I mean, you know, I tell the students all the time, and this is America, and we've been to a lot of countries where we don't have the freedoms we have here. So I think more than any country, we're in control of what we want to be. So it's up to us to set our goals. It's up to us to, to go out and make it happen. And I think too many times today, people hear the negatives and say, "Oh, I can't do it. I can't do it." Mm-hmm. I don't think we ever saw obstacles. They were more challenges that we wanted to overcome.
Yeah.
And so you have to look at it differently.
I think that's one of the major issues is that a lot of fear sets in, and there's too many distractions right now. But one thing there is a lot of right now, as far as life coaching, business coaching, personal development stuff with the internet, there's so much of it. Now, back in your day, where did you get that information from, or was it from your family, or was it just kind of innate, like that you had it inside of you? How did you have that mindset in that time period?
Well, I think, when we grew up, like I said, there was 8 of us, and we had dinner together. But when we grew up, always the discussion around our table was about Harshbarger Dairy, because that was the dairy on our mother's side, and it had been in existence since 1907. Mm-hmm. And so everybody seemed to work there, the family members. But what we remember well is that every night it seemed like they were arguing about, who did the least work and who got the most pay. And it was just constant squabbles about it. And so our mother kind of pushed us away from the family business, because she had seen what happened with her family, and said, "You guys, all of you need to go to college and get out of here." And most of us did go to college. And I remember when I told her I was going to be a math teacher. Actually, I went to Penn State to be a math teacher. And Bob took me to a game my sophomore year in Pittsburgh. He used to take me to Pittsburgh for ball games. Anyway, he took me in and said, "Why don't you switch to business management?" We had 2 stores. "Once you switch to business management, you and I are going to open 10 stores. So I said, "Okay." I come home and told Mother, and she was not happy. I said, "Why?" She said, "Well, he's been saying he's going to open 10 stores forever, and he's got 2, and it's been, 16 years. I said, "Yeah, but he's going to do it this time. I know it." And so I switched to business management, and we, sure enough, 1972, we opened our 10th store down in Huntington, Pennsylvania. I still remember the day. It was June 30th. Jim Kalos was our manager, still with us today, which is hard to imagine. And we cut the ribbon, and Bob said, "Brother, let's open 100. And I knew we would, because, he's the same guy that told me when we had 2, convinced me to switch to business management, and we'd open 10. And here we were opening 10. So I knew we'd open 100.
If you can do 10, you can do 100.
Absolutely.
Just scaling it up.
Once you get it going, yeah.
Yeah, and before we get started as well, we kind of brought this up a little bit, I guess. Some people get to certain points and then they hit that peak that they wanted to get to, that goal, and they can coast from there. And they're happy for that happening, but they never set another goal. That obviously has always been the point of Sheetz. You hit the goal, set another one.
Yeah, and I think Bob, when Bob had the first store, it didn't really do that well. In fact, he drove a school bus. He had to supplement his income because he had 4 children. And so he was driving a school bus just to keep that store afloat. I mean, many people closed those stores. There were a lot of those little dairy stores, neighborhood stores, and most of them closed through the years. But he was able to supplement his income by driving a school bus. And he hung in there, and then it was 10 years until that second store opened. But I think about it, and a lot of people would have given up.
Yeah.
But Bob had that drive and was convinced that he could make this thing work. And I remember 1960, when I started with him, he drove down to Washington, D.C. to see this new phenomenon that he had read about. It was called 7-Eleven. Yeah. And they were opening down in D.C. And he went down and he came back and said, that's what I want to be. And he threw the restaurant out of his first store, which was kind of an L-shaped building, and half of it was a restaurant. He threw the restaurant out and said, that's what I'm going to be, convenience store.
And that was the dawning moment that he had.
That was the big moment.
Then that's wild, right? Because some people think like you have to create things out of thin air, like it's got to be your idea. You don't want to copy other people, but obviously he took that model, the 7-Eleven model, made it his own thing. And you could see the similarities, obviously.
Right.
But it's become such a powerhouse in our area and on the East Coast that, being from Pennsylvania, I'd always pick Sheetz over a 7-Eleven, but I would never really compare the two. Sheetz had its own feel and its own uniqueness about it. So what's your stance on that as far as taking somebody else's thing and maybe not completely ripping it off, just copying it to get a better leg up on what you're doing?
That's what Bob and I were all about. I mean, we would read constantly. And when we read about somebody was doing something interesting, we got plane tickets and we flew there. And I still remember, it was so funny because we used to go to all the conventions every year, big conventions, and we'd read about these people, and he and I would kind of target who we wanted to see at the convention. Mm-hmm. Everybody has breakfast together, and you go through a line. And so we kind of position ourselves down at the breakfast buffet. And I might be looking for Jerry Thompson, who ran 7-Eleven, or I might be looking for Chester Cadshow, who had Quick Trip. And that's what we did. And we waited for them, and we jumped right in line with them, and we had breakfast with them. And then we started talking. And I remember with Chester, Chester was selling 60,000 gallons a week, and we were selling 10. And I said, what's he doing? Well, I remember waiting for him, and I sat down with him. Pretty soon, he asked me to come to Tulsa, and I was there. Yeah. And he was telling me how you pump 60,000 gallons. You put in more pumps, and you got to get bigger restrooms, and you got to put a canopy up. All these things that I thought were extra expense. He showed me that it's what customers wanted. Mm-hmm. So that's what we did. We copied everything. We're the best copiers ever. Yeah. I'm not kidding. We would jump on planes and go and find... we saw somebody was doing food, and I remember we went to England because there was a lot of great packaged food coming out of there, which eventually led to our ready-to-eat sandwiches and salads in our store. Because in England, that's been big forever. Here, people wanted everything they thought fresh, but they didn't like it packaged. But when you go to Europe, you can get fresh food packaged everywhere. So we were constantly looking for new ideas.
And it's so important to do that. And I think a lot of people miss that step sometimes just because I don't know if you don't want to feel like you're stepping on somebody's toes, or you don't want to feel like you're ripping somebody off or you're copying what they're doing. But in order to move ahead, you've got to stand on the shoulders of giants, right? And follow what they're already doing. And you can always learn something from somebody.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah, we went to Japan and visited 7-Eleven. Fascinating because I think at the time they had about 1,000 stores. We walked into their room, big conference center, and every supervisor was there. They were all male, and they all had black pants and a white shirt on. I mean, it was 100 of them, and they all looked the same. But in Japan, what we found was that the properties were so small in Tokyo because you couldn't afford bigger, that they got deliveries 3 times a day. And we said, wow, we didn't think about that being a way to reduce the size of a store. I mean, you get 3 deliveries a day. You don't need a lot of inventory. And pretty soon, of course, we were into our own distribution, and 3 days a week. Pretty soon, we were delivering 7 days a week. But you always learn something along the way.
Reading Sam Walton's book, who created Walmart, same exact thing, is that he copied from everybody. He went and saw what they did right, got arrested in, I forget, like Singapore or something, for crawling around on the floors, measuring the distance between the shelves to make sure that he had the adequate room, and they were maybe he was trying to find something they were doing that he wasn't doing right. So that process, that humbleness, right, is something that helps you move forward, because if you're thinking you already know it all, you're never going to move forward.
It reminds me, I was out I ride with our supervisors. We all do at least twice a quarter, and I was in Ohio a couple of years ago. And when I go out, I always like to stop in a competitor. Like I was out Tuesday, I was in a Speedway. But a couple of years ago, I was in a Speedway in Ohio, and I walked in and was walking around. A woman come out of the back room all dressed up, and she said, "Get out of this store, Mr. Sheetz, get out of here." She had seen me in a magazine, and she was throwing me out of the store. I said, "Listen, I want you out of the store."
You in there with a notepad writing stuff down.
Yeah. And so we left. I said, "Listen, I've been thrown to better places. You just, keep going."
But how do they think they built their thing? I mean, I'm sure everybody, it's not like everybody had the original idea.
Well,
pick and choose.
You run into people all the time. It doesn't stop me. Like I say, I was in Tuesday. I was in a new Speedway on the way to Pittsburgh just to check it out.
Yeah, there's so many places of competition now for you to check out and study. So the great thing is, I guess, this is your life, right? I mean, you live this day in and day out, so you're always in those situations working, technically.
Well, yeah. I mean, we always say the vision at Sheetz is, to put the business as we know it today out of business. Because if you go back to the 50s, Bob's first store was all about a deli. It's about dairy. It was about people packing their lunches. Back then we had, I don't know, more than 10,000 railroad workers. So we were, they were in here buying chipped ham and cheese, and they were packing lunches. We had tasty cakes, and everybody, even at school, we packed our lunches when we went to school. It's almost unheard of today.
Yeah.
But that was a different business model. So that model today really doesn't exist. It's very hard to exist because people don't pack lunches.
Yeah.
So then we had to kind of make a shift, which was immediate consumption. People really wanted it now, immediate gratification, which led to, starting fast food and just started with hot dogs. And we just kind of went from there. But that, we had to build that food and beverage business, which has been the biggest challenge. Because the other two parts of our business, you take gasoline. Pennsylvania didn't even have self-serve gasoline until 1972.
Yeah.
So none of our stores originally had gas. So the gas came on, and then, we got better at it as we went. But even the gas business now is overall is kind of flat and going down. You got the electric vehicle challenge coming at us.
Yeah.
And then on the cigarette side, those cigarette sales have been going down for, forever.
Yeah.
Less people smoking, which is a good thing.
But they cost, I don't know if this is true or not, that I heard that less people smoke, but the cigarettes cost more. So the tobacco industry actually makes more now than they used to.
Oh, they do.
Because the prices are higher, but that doesn't help you guys out, I guess.
No, and a lot of the price, if a pack of cigarettes is, $7, usually all of the federal government, the state government, even local government has joined in. They get like $4.50 or $5 out of that.
Really?
$7. Oh yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, it's
that's a great racket they have going. That's awesome.
They get big money.
Yeah, seriously. In your book, you were talking about the customer-focused part. That's when you guys really turned things around. That was huge to go from management focus to customer focus. How, I guess anybody running a business, myself or anybody else who has their own business, becoming customer-focused. What is a good piece of advice you could give to stay on track with that? Because I know you can think that in your head, like, oh, yeah, of course I want to focus on the customers. That's how I make my money, but that usually slips away after a certain amount of time. How do you guys stay on track with that and stay focused with it?
Yeah, it was easy when I think back to one store because Bob and I worked the register and we interacted with customers constantly, so they were giving us feedback. As you get to 10 stores and then you get to 100, each time as you grow, you've got to find new ways. Obviously your employees help to stay in touch, but you still got to stay in touch with customers. And when Bob left, after we opened the store 100, like in store number 10, we cut the ribbon. He said, let's open 100. And we cut the ribbon at 100. He said, brother, I'm going to Florida. Because here you had a bus driver with a dream, I think, of 100 stores.
Uh-huh.
And he hit it.
Yeah.
And he left and went to Florida. He's been there ever since.
So he got out of the game almost completely, or is he
No,
still involved?
he left, and he's been on the board ever since. Obviously, had ownership. But when he left, I always say he took his vision with him because he was kind of the visionary and I was more the manager.
Okay.
So I managed day-to-day operations. I did the layout of the store, hired the people, got the equipment in, boom, boom. He found the locations and got the financing, and I ran the stores. Was kind of how we did it. So then he left in '84. And our sales and customer counts just went down. Mm-hmm. And that's when I said, well, we've lost something here. I mean, we need to get the magic back here.
Yeah.
And that's when my brother Louie and I went to Hagerstown. We interviewed 40 heavy users of Sheetz and 40 heavy users of a competitor. Heavy user at that time was 5 times a week. I mean, we were looking for people who really used convenience stores 5 times a week.
How did you guys find them? How did you?
We actually had a company call on the phone and interview these people until they had to be convinced that they actually shopped 5 times.
Okay.
And so they got us 40 heavy users of us and 40 heavy users of a competitor. So Louis sat down one-on-one with 20 Sheetz and 20 non-Sheetz, and I sat down. 2 days it was. And we came away with our mission. That was back in 1987. That mission serves us today. And it's really built around exactly what the customers want us. Provide customers with fast and friendly service, quality products in clean, convenient locations. Those were the 5 items they wanted. Mm-hmm. They wanted one more item, which was open 24 hours. We already were. Yeah. So we couldn't really get better. But it was all about, clean locations, and it was about having quality products. And the quality products really led us down a path of, then you go to focus groups and what do they mean? And at that point, we had packaged food, and they wanted fresh food, and that really led to the made-to-order program. It led to us throwing out coffee, every 30 minutes. It led to getting machines that were beeping and blinking at you. And through those focus groups, and then beyond that, we had to back it up and make sure that it was valid, so we had to get a bigger sample. And those 5 items were what they wanted. I mean, they wanted cleanliness, quality products, clean, and they wanted enough gas pumps. They wanted enough parking. They said, if we drive by there and there's not an open gas pump, we got other choices. We're not coming in. Mm-hmm. If we drive by there and there's not an open parking stall, we're not coming in.
They can't see it from the road. They're not coming
so
in.
That led to bigger locations. It led to more gas pumps. And all of a sudden, we go from 10,000 a week inside to 70, 80,000 a week inside. And you go from 10,000 gallons to 60,000 gallons, 70,000 gallons. So it was a good lesson. And we said, we've lost customer focus and we're not going to lose it again. And so that's when the vision as well came out, which was, to create the business that will put Sheetz as we know it today out of business. And that kind of leads to constant reinvention and constant questioning of what the customer wants. So people say, like, I remember employees say and students, where are you going to be in 20 years? I always say the same thing. We're going to be where the customer wants us to be. And you say, come on, give us a real answer. I said, that is the real answer. I mean, we have to stay in touch with customers.
Yeah.
Not just with surveys, but like writing stores, which I was just out in Pittsburgh on Tuesday. We spend a day writing stores, talking to customers, talking to employees. I mean, you need, obviously, the big sample, the validation sample, but you also need to get out there and talk to customers and employees and know what's going on.
Yeah, actually in the field who are there doing it day in and day out.
Yeah, you got to be out in the field.
I find it amazing that the whole focus group part of it, like that's such a simple concept, right? I'm not saying it was easy to do, but it's a simple thing to do. And this all came out of that. And so from 84, when Bob left and you guys were kind of confused as to what to do, up until 87, you figured we got to get a group together and figure out exactly what they want. And you went from that 2-day focus group and created what Sheetz is today.
Well, we actually went from 2-day one-on-one, and then we spent probably a week doing focus groups because they told us those 5 items, but what did clean mean? So, I remember sitting down with people, what does clean mean? And so we showed them buildings, and they said the white building is cleaner than the red brick. And I'm like, what? We showed them different lots. They said that lot's cleaner. It had more lighting.
And wasn't it like blacktop compared to concrete too?
The
that
concrete
made it
one, they said that was much cleaner. We're like,
it's
what?
all just
So we said we've been looking at this thing wrong. We thought clean uniforms and clean stores.
Yeah.
Certainly that's part of it, but lighting and how many windows do you have? Can I see in?
Yeah.
All of that was critical.
Which you never think about, because those are just kind of emotional reactions, right? That people have to situations, especially driving by them. Like you immediately have a split reaction.
Sure. Convenient location. They said we don't like to use your restroom. Why is that? Well, because I have to get a key from the clerk. I don't want to get a key from the clerk. What do you want? I want to just walk in and go to the restroom. Okay, we got rid of the keys.
Got rid of the doors in some situations.
Got rid of the doors in the new ones. We got bigger restrooms. I was in one yesterday. Had 3 men's stalls and 4 urinals. I'm like, wow, we've come a long way. When I started, we had a unisex. When I actually started, we didn't even let you use a restroom.
Oh yeah.
I was at Pleasant Valley. I remember. Our second store working all the time. And they'd come in and say, I need to go to the bathroom. I said, I don't have one. Where do you go? I said, well, I have one, but it's for me.
I have a bucket out back. I'm not going to let you use it.
Yeah, it's for me. But now you got these big restrooms, but it's what people want. We had looked at that as an expense. If you have a big restroom, you got to clean it. Well, it's definitely a competitive advantage. People want to stop where you have clean restroom. So we began to look at everything from a customer standpoint rather than, a manager who wants to cut expenses.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to cut expenses, you're not building one of those big restrooms, with 4 urinals and 3, you're not building that.
You're restricting the water.
Absolutely.
It's cutting things way back.
So you're cutting back. And so when you do that, you're cutting back on the demand because that's not what customers want. So we had to give them what they want. I remember looking at the canopy on the gas. I said, we don't get that much rain or snow. What the hell am I going to put in a canopy for? And all of a sudden, people said, we want a canopy. You know what? What we were doing wasn't working in the 80s. We said, we're going with what the customers want here. And we began to change, quality products. We started making them fresh. Cleanliness, we started doing concrete lots, more lighting, more glass. Convenient location, we opened up the restrooms. We built much bigger sites, more parking stalls, more gas. We did everything they wanted.
Yeah.
We didn't even take credit cards, if you can imagine, back in the mid-'80s. Didn't take credit cards. Why? Because it's an expense. Today, I think we pay the credit card companies about $140 million a year.
Really?
To process
for fees.
Cards. Yeah.
Because that's the most convenient way to do it.
It's what people want.
People want to use, nobody. I don't carry cash on me.
Yeah.
I
I remember in the 80s when the card reader in the pump, they call it CRIN, when you could put the credit card in the pump.
Mm-hmm.
And it cost $8,000 per pump to convert. Many people in the industry said, we're not going to do that. We're going to spend it. And I said, wow, this is an advantage. We're going to spend $8,000 per pump, but there's a lot of people not spending it.
Nobody else is going to do it.
Guess what? Where do you think they're going to come? The customer. Here they come.
Yeah.
We'll spend the $8,000. It was worse than that, though. People said, you're going to spend $8,000. And I used to come in the store because I had to pay. I don't have to come in the store. I'm going to put my credit card in the pump, which cost me $8,000 per, and I'm not coming in the store. And so many of the competitors said, why would I do that?
Sure, yeah. I mean, that would be a natural reaction.
It was my reaction at first, too.
Yeah.
I said, how much is this going to cost us? But then, over time, I realized how many people weren't doing it, and they went out of business. So it's a competitive advantage.
That's so crazy because you would think that's going to ruin us. You know, we're paying money at the pump, and also nobody's coming in to buy the convenience store food and stuff. Yet it turned out to be probably one of the best things you could have done.
Oh,
and then
great.
you led the industry, and now everybody does it.
Yeah, I mean, it was great because it definitely ended up being a competitive advantage because they're still going to stop. I mean, yeah, I'm going to go get gas and put my credit card in. If I don't have to go to the bathroom, I won't stop. I do have to go to the bathroom many times. I want a drink. I want something to grab to eat.
Yeah.
You know, so you may stop in every 2 times or something, but you're going to come back.
Yeah.
You're going to come back to the place you get gas, fuel. You're going to come back to us, and they do.
Yeah, the convenience is incredible. And every time we travel somewhere and there's not a Sheetz around,
Right.
I always miss Sheetz. And not just because it's a hometown sort of thing. Because I'm sure you've heard this a million times, but people who come in from out of the area and they come to Sheetz, like, man, I wish we had one of these
Right.
where we're from because you speak to the customer directly.
Yeah.
And that's just such a powerful thing that I think a lot of people overlook. So you kind of combined the customer focus also with the finding things that other people were doing right and then copying that, but then also finding things that people were doing wrong or weren't doing at all and then mixing that in.
Yeah. But I think, when you say you have a customer focus, if you, as we were doing, sitting in a room in the early 80s, trying to decide things on our own, that's the wrong solution. We got to be in the field talking with customers. We also, when we talked with customers, we talked with employees and said, what do you want? What don't you like? What do you like? Number one was, I don't want to work by myself. In those days, we didn't have enough business that you work by yourself. 1988, we committed that there would never be one employee on duty. You would always have somebody with you.
Okay.
There would always be at least 2 people. Once again, big expense. But we had to build a store that would support 2 people. So we had to get sales, and we kind of put it all together. And all of a sudden we said, we're going to do what the employees want and what the customers want. And that's when you have a customer focus, when you really do what they're telling you want done.
So that leads to the next part is like finding the right employees and the right people on the team. What's your strategy? Because I think anybody right now, I have 2 people that I brought on board from my own company, and that can be the hardest part, just trusting people, number one, making sure they're the right people and giving them time. And what if over time you find out they're not and you've wasted all this time and money on them?
Mm-hmm.
What are your I don't know if you have like a core set of strategies that you use for that would help people out.
Well, when I started, we had 8 people, 1960, and 5 of them were family members actually at that first store. Today we have almost 20,000 people.
Yeah.
But I grew over time. When I came out of college with 3 stores, and my job as a supervisor was to check out the register each day at each store, hire every person, make out your grocery order. When you got the order, come and put a price on the outside. I did everything. When we got to 7 stores, 1972, I was still doing that. Why? Because I didn't trust people.
Yeah, so in your book you wrote that, yeah.
Oh, so all of a sudden I'm like, no, wait a minute. Do we want to grow or don't we? If we want to grow, I've got to grow.
Yeah.
So
like personal development.
Yeah. And in the end, you really have to grow people before you grow the business. And in my case, it had to be me as well as other people. So I had to say, I've got to learn to trust people. So in 1972, all of a sudden, we're going to double our size from 7 to 14. Well, I can't be running around checking out. We're Johnstown, we're Huntington, we're Stake. I can't be going to every store, counting the money, hiring every person, making it. No, I can't do it. Now we've got to train people. 1972 was a horrible year because not only did we bring on 7 stores, but remember, we had 7 managers who hadn't been trained because I was trying to do everything for them.
Right. So there was managers there, but you were still doing most of the stuff. I was still doing it all.
They weren't trained, So, yeah, that was a rough year. But, you have to, in your mind, assume that people are good, and I do. I mean, it was in my own head that I didn't trust people. Most people are to be trusted. Doesn't mean that You don't interview them and find and do background checks and all of that. People continues to be. I mean, the getting of people, attracting people, continues to be the top priority, I think, with Sheetz, and will be. It'll be our biggest challenge as we go forward. But I think we've got to provide what you want, much the same as a customer. Mm-hmm. What do you want? We love college students as employees. Why? Because it was a study done, and the top clerks in the store, when they did the study, half of them were either in college or had come out of college.
Really?
And 50% had been referred by a person who already worked there. So those were the two things we decided to incent. So at Sheetz, we'll help pay for your college, we'll subsidize, and we'll pay you. We always paid you early on to bring on another person.
Why do you think that is? Why do you think that the college students were the best as far overall employees? I'm surprised by that. I mean, I guess in some certain situations it might make sense, but I would think it'd be somebody older maybe who is more professional or whatever the situation might be.
And it doesn't mean we don't. I mean, there's a lot of obviously great people of all ages, but I think overall the students had a kind of a positive attitude. They were still young and they were looking to the future, and I think all of that reflected in how they treated customers.
Good spirits.
Sometimes, I mean, I've always hired a lot of women. I was really slanted toward female managers. And people said, why? Because I had like 8 out of 10 were female. So why? Well, I said, I want a woman who has raised children. They're pretty good managers.
Yeah, with time, with
time. They have to prepare meals. They have to manage so many different things.
A lot of
kids
balancing.
Get sick when they go to the hospital. I mean, think about what they have to manage.
Seriously,
And sure enough, they were good managers. Today, we still have majority of managers will be female.
That's an amazing strategy. I've never heard anybody put it like that. That makes a lot of sense. Were you guys at the time? Was that pretty rare? I'd imagine to have like 8 female managers.
It definitely was. I mean, you're seeing it more and more females now, but it was definitely because you have to remember that most stores and many today still you work by yourself, and so people look at that and say, "I'm not sure that's right for a woman." But today things have really changed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When it comes to, I guess, switching this up a little bit, just talking about helping out kids in the Entrepreneur Center here downtown, which we're a block away from, that's some of the stuff that I love the most is the way you guys have given back throughout the years and just try to help people who are trying to start their own business or trying to come up to figure out exactly what it is and how they want to do what they want to do. When it comes to fear, when it comes to those sorts of things that a lot of people, they get stuck somewhere on a fear scale or just on a growth scale, what did you do to get yourself past those sorts of things? I mean, I know you had good people around you, you had a good family. Was there anything internally that you used that was like pushing yourself past that place where you were freaking out? You knew, like, I got to do this next step to grow, but how do I do it?
Well, I think that a lot of things that pushed me, but certainly fear of failure was a big one. If you go back to my grandfather became an entrepreneur back in the early 1900s. Came out of the Wharton School at Penn, worked for a bank, developed some allergies, and he couldn't work inside, so he had to come back here. Worked on his brother Billy's chicken farm, and all of a sudden, the farmers say we need somebody to haul milk, and pretty soon he's hauling milk, and he opens a dairy. Entrepreneur. And comes my father. My father in the 40s seems the whole business changing with the home delivery going away, which my grandfather didn't want to see. And my father sees this new phenomenon called AMP. And he says, we got to start selling to these people. And J.E., my grandfather didn't see it. And then my father opened 5 stores, another entrepreneur. Then comes Bob, and Bob takes that one store. And I'm like, holy crap, I gotta succeed here.
Yeah.
I'm from a family of entrepreneurs. So I think you got the fear of failure. 1, 2, I really think people need a strong mentor. and I had the best mentor in Bob. You talk about having no fear. I mean, I watched him negotiate. I watched him, I think, you see in the book, we went to any game we wanted to go to. I remember saying, we had in 1971, I think, 6 stores. And we were going to our first conference in Philadelphia. And I remember saying, Bob, I really would like to see Pistol Pete Maravich. He was the best at basketball out of LSU. And I said, we'll just drive to New York. I mean, we're in Philadelphia. We'll drive up there. So we drove up and sorry, sold out. In those days, they were selling tickets not in advance right there. Sold out, I said, Bob, we're going to have to go back. We're not leaving here. We're going to the game. I said, but they said they're sold out. I don't care. We started banging on doors. It's not, if you remember Madison Square Garden, it was all doors all around. They were escapes, exits. And we started pounding on doors. By the 4th door, we get a janitor. Opens the door. Bob has $20. And the guy says, there's no seats. We sat in the aisle,
Yeah.
And he said, no, tomorrow night sold out too. He said, I'm going to tell you, but tomorrow night it was Lou Alcindor. He was still Lou Alcindor, not Kareem Abdul-Jabbar.
Okay.
Lou Alcindor is going to be here. He's playing Willis Reed, and I can get you seats. We came back the next night too.
Another $20. Slipped
$20. Yeah, except this time we had to pay somebody else to move us the seats. And then I remember that first time because I said, I've read about Joe Namath got a bar up here. We said, let's go. We went to Joe Namath's bar. I was trying to think what it's called. There was Joe back in the corner. I'm like, holy crap, we can do anything we want. This really is America.
Yeah. So that's when you guys had like 6 stores. That's like in the 70s. It dawned on you.
It was 1970. Yeah, 1971.
Dawned on you then. Hey,
Well, I'm watching my brother. This guy, you want to go to the World Series? Yeah, let's go.
Where did he get it from? Where did he get that fearlessness from?
He had it in him somewhere. He just had this. First of all, there's 8 of us. The only one of the 8 who did not graduate from college was him.
Okay.
The only one. But yet, he was a lifelong learner. He surrounded himself with, I remember the bank president, Frank Marsh, who kind of was our best friend. Gave us money when I think the rest of the bankers didn't want anything to do with us, but he knew us, and he knew Bob, and he had Leo Wachter who ran Pepsi. He surrounded himself with good people. Phil Clavan. Phil Clavan probably had 30 shoe stores, and he would spend all his time, and he was constantly learning from this guy. But he got to the point where we can go to the Super Bowl, we can go wherever you want to go. We don't have tickets. I don't care. We have tickets. We don't need tickets. We'll get them when we get there. And we'd go. And I'm like, whoa.
And you'd get in.
We would get in everything we went to. And I said to myself, wow, you really can be and do anything you want. And there's no question about that. And I picked up on that right away.
Yeah.
And he was a really tough negotiator as well. I remember negotiating with Stroman's bread and with Pepsi, and one day he told me he's going to throw Pepsi out of it. Pepsi outsells Coke like 5 to 1.
Right.
What are we going to do? He said, well, they're not giving me 10-cent cans. They're giving them to AMP, and they won't give us 10-cent cans. We're throwing them out. I'm like, really? He threw them out.
Did he really?
Yeah. Take your shelving with you.
That's so ballsy. That's what you have to do, right? I mean, that's why it works.
I mean, unfortunately, though, there's a conflict here because the customer can say, where's your Pepsi? Threw them out. That's not a good answer. But I couldn't believe he'd do it, but he did it. And then, of course, Pepsi came back and negotiated and said yes.
There you go. Yeah, the fearlessness eventually paid off. I mean, maybe not initially when people were freaking out about it, but yeah, that's something that I've always struggled with. And starting my own business, that was kind of the point, was to go out on my own. I have to I have to try this. I have to do it, or I'm gonna always regret not doing it. And you talk about mentors. I just had Ray Overdorf on. That's what we were talking about as well. I was talking about mentors. And in the world we live in right now, not a lot of people talk about that. I mean, you have people you look up to, you have people that you idolize, but when you say like a mentor, you had somebody that you was your older brother. He grabbed you by the shirt and brought you with him, right? I mean,
absolutely.
That's the best kind to have. So somebody who doesn't have one, what advice would you give to them to find those people who are, the place that they want to be at in the future? How do they find them?
I tell our student, I started Sheetz Fellows because as I looked back at, what had helped me through the years get where I was, and I kind of tried to develop that program, and Penn State really allowed us to develop that program, so that in college when I had an entrepreneur come in and speak, I always found that really uplifting, and I thought it was great. So we started an entrepreneur residence where we bring the entrepreneurs in every 2 weeks, and our students, can interact. But then when my wife and I had a chance to go abroad, we were like 35 years old. When we first went to Paris, and then pretty soon we were in Russia. And wow, this is a whole different world. I got to get this experience to these students earlier. So we have a study abroad where we take them for 10 days, and they get to choose where. And then leadership conference.
So you started that even back then, back in your 30s, when you started working with students and stuff like that?
No, but I say it wasn't until I was 35 that my wife and I actually left the country.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
And I wanted to get that experience because we learned so much. I wanted to get that experience earlier to these college students, which is what we've done. They get to choose where we're going, and we take them for 10 days. And then I wanted them to have a mentor. So we have a committee of 5 of us that sits down, and we review everything about that student, what they want to do when they graduate. And we match them up with a mentor in this area. And they tell me that's been one of the most satisfying and rewarding parts, I think, of the program. So we kind of pieced all of that together as I look back to what had really helped me, and we kind of put that together. And I tell the students when we talk, I said, listen, one of the biggest things I learned from Bob was to ask for help. And I watched him talk to that banker. I watched him talk to the president. Nobody turned him down. And I said, you have to take the initiative to go up. And when I told you the story when we go to the conventions, I just wait for somebody. Nobody ever turned me down. People do not turn you down. You've got to have the gumption, I would say, to introduce yourself and ask for help. They will not refuse you. But all you have to do is ask, is my point. And so we try to teach them that, because it's not easy for a young person to go out and say, I need help, or ask for help.
Yeah,
But Bob was, he was right there. He was constantly asking these people. And I constantly ask people then, which I didn't do earlier. And now that's what I'm pushing for the students. I want you to ask.
It's so true. And Ray and I were just talking about it as well. And he was saying the same thing. When he was young, he just approached people and asked them for help. And I said, where did you get the idea to do that? Like, where did you get the guts to do it? And how did you know the right people to talk to? And he's like, just follow your heart. And if you wait around for that person to show up, and you talk to them.
Well, you ask people to come on the show. You ask me, you ask others, you ask them to come on the show, right?
Yeah. That's one of the reasons I've learned from other people
it's the same thing,
yeah. It's been years of because I think internally you know what to do, right? But it's just getting the guts to do it, or just getting over that hump. And once you do, then it seems it's not easy, but it's definitely not as tricky as you thought it was going to be.
Oh, sure.
And I think when you're 18, 19 years old, it seems like the most impossible thing in the world. Because, all the thoughts in your head are usually going to be negative around that thing. Unless you're like your brother Bob, who was like, you know what, I'm just going to go for it. He had that switch turned on for some reason.
My kids and grandkids, they laugh at me because I talk to everybody. I go down the street and I'll talk to everybody. And the next generation, I shouldn't say everybody, but a lot of them hesitate to talk to people. But one of the key things, obviously, when I started working at the age of 12, think about it, I was interacting with customers constantly, hundreds a day. Would come up to there, hi, how are you? We were trained to, smile, always say hello, how are you doing? Always thank you. We had to interact. I started at the age of 12.
Yeah.
So I constantly interacted with people, hundreds, every single day. And I think that makes a huge difference in terms of social skills, in terms of being able to communicate with people.
The consistency of it, right? Doing it over and over again.
Absolutely.
Especially if you're not attuned to doing that sort of thing.
And many of them don't have that opportunity today,
Yeah.
to interact.
You can sit on your phone all day and interact with anybody you want
Absolutely,
to.
you can. Yeah.
when you're in front of other people, it can be tricky. And I know at a young age, especially. And I work with young kids. I'm involved in a couple different programs, and I try to get that point across as much as I can, because I was that kid when I was young who was afraid to approach people, afraid to talk to people.
Sure.
And I saw how much that, and I knew even back then that was holding me back, but it was like I couldn't force myself to do it.
Sure.
So if you can find that person who's ahead of you who can kind of push that message
it's like
across.
The gas business. I told you we went to see the guy who was pumping 60,000. He showed me everything. When we really wanted to get big into the food and beverage, and we're building the big store at 17th Street, I called McDonald's.
Oh, really?
I thought, I don't know what the chances are, but I want to go to McDonald's. They entertained us.
Did they really?
I took a team out, and they laid out in the Sheetz conference room every new product that they were coming out with. I'm thinking, why would they do this?
Yeah.
I mean, really, why would they do this?
Why would they do that?
And it's when they were struggling, because I say struggling. It's when they bought Chipotle. They owned Chipotle.
Okay.
They had a pizza chain. They had Pret Manger. They had all these different. They were getting really distracted. Mm-hmm. But they took us in. I'm saying today, if I called them, they'd say, get lost, most likely.
Yeah.
But they took us.
I guess you were at the right level, too, that they were like, and they were at the right level. You guys kind of met.
And Chick-fil-A, we called Chick-fil-A. They hosted a group down at their place called Walmart. They hosted our top team down at their place.
I've heard of that place.
I mean, I'm saying you've got to make the call.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, you guys were saying that in the 80s, right? In your book, you were saying you guys got kind of off track, too, lost your focus, and started a bunch of different ventures, and then realized, wait a minute,
well, that's what
we're
I said.
not focusing on our main thing.
At the end of 80s, that's when we started down to Hagerstown to talk, because we knew we had lost focus, yeah.
And that's what kind of happens, I guess, is you, and I guess this isn't everybody, but when you start to get really successful at one thing, you think you can do a bunch of different things.
Well, the problem was we still had the model that we had built for take-home customers, and the take-home business was really going down fast, and people wanted immediate consumption, but our product mix was still geared toward take-home. And so we had to redo the whole facility, the offer, I mean, everything we had to redo. And we did. And eventually, I said, we had one store out of 150. We had one store, Lewistown, that fit the vision of where we're going. And now we had to get 149 and say, what are we going to do with them? And is it a challenge? It's a challenge. But at least we found the direction we needed to go. Yeah. We had one store that fit it. The rest didn't. But, boy, we were excited. Let's go. And the whole organization was excited. And then the sales started at 20%, another 25% the next year, 20 more. Just, wow, that's this amazing. Thing is working.
Well, you see it happen in one place. That means it can be replicated in all the other places. I mean, that's like.
And we always say when our stores are pulling for something, rather than us pushing it down, we know it's going to succeed. They were pulling for this new program called MTO. We want it. We all want it now. We want it.
All the stores wanted that.
But it takes like 2 years, to get back and revamp. But when they are pulling for it, it's going to succeed. Yeah. As opposed to pushing. You're going to do this. Here's what you're going to do. Yeah. They don't like that so much.
Yeah. Yeah, that switch right there, that was the huge part for you guys. That changed everything. Real quick, so I guess just towards the end here, just to get a couple of questions that I think would be important for people to get something out of. Could you name like 3 or 5 things that made you successful or could make anybody successful? I know we've already covered a lot of that on here. Are there any things we haven't mentioned that you think is important for anybody at the Entrepreneur Center, anybody who's trying to either starting their own business or working for somebody else? What are some of those success tips?
Well, I think most importantly, and when I speak about passion. You have to have a passion for what you do. And if you're not passionate about what you do, quit doing what you're doing. Mm-hmm. Get out and find what you are passionate about. And sometimes, it's about a mentor. In my case, I grew up hanging out with people who played cards and shot pool, and unfortunately, it wasn't. They weren't great. So you have to surround yourself with people that have a passion and people that are motivated. That is really big because now all of a sudden you want to keep up with them. So if you're with the right group who are passionate and who are achievers, you want to be there too.
Mm-hmm.
So I say you've got to have a passion, I mean, I didn't have a passion with Bob. I got a passion. I got a passion for success. I got a passion to satisfy customers. I got a passion for life, a passion about helping people. I just have a passion. And I think you've got to find that within you first. I still believe it's really important to have a mentor, and that means being able to, as you would say, have the guts to say, will you help me?
Mm-hmm.
Ask for help, That's how you get better. I think you learn from others. And more importantly, I would say you set goals. You set realistic goals, and then you make sure that you achieve those goals, Some people set goals, and they don't do anything to make it happen. That's not going to work.
Mm-hmm.
Get used to setting goals and striving toward those goals. When I was back, I said we had 7 stores. I was doing everything myself, and I said I've got to grow. And we've always said you got to grow people before you grow the company. So at that point, every year, at the end of the year, I get through, because I always have my black book, which my wife always laughed at. But everything I did was in there, and I listed it all. And every year I would drop the bottom 25%.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Because I said I have to grow. Then it got better because I said, now I've got to only do what other people cannot do. Not what I like to do, because I used to do what I like to do.
Yeah.
Now I've got to get it to where I only need to do what other people cannot do.
Wow.
And that leads to, visioning. What business are we going to be in? Looking at the challenges we're going to face in the long term, like electric vehicles and the whole food. It leads you to do what you should be doing, not what you want to be doing.
Yeah.
So it started with dropping 25% every year because I felt I had to grow 25% on the top end, to where I said, okay, now I've got to drop everything that somebody else can do and leave me only with what somebody else cannot do. Why should I be doing what somebody else can do?
Because anybody can do that. Everybody is probably doing that who's on your level.
Yeah. So what should I be doing? Well, I should be looking at the vision of the company. I should be, what are the challenges facing us going forward the next 25, 30 years? What are we going to do to adapt to it? What are the innovations? Those are the things that, I need to be doing.
What strategies do you use when you're visioning, when you're looking at the future? Do you have a certain place you go to or a certain thing you do to get that inspiration? I know if I go on a walk, great ideas always pop into my head. That's my strategy for if I'm stuck on something. What's your strategy with that?
Well, I think a lot of it has to do with reading about, successful companies. I mean, God, right now you look at Amazon and Google, and, it's a whole different world from where I was. But all of a sudden, Amazon's opening convenience stores.
Yeah.
And guess what? They don't have any people.
Yeah.
In there. They're cashless, or you walk in and you put your card in, and then it's using visual identification, as well as and I can go in there, no employees, and I can grab stuff off the shelf.
Have you been to one?
We're going.
Are you really?
We got an invite. Not an invite. We asked for an invite.
Okay.
We are going in August.
Where to?
In Seattle. We're
Awesome.
going to see the distribution center. We are going to visit the store.
Wow.
We're going to Starbucks. Back to the whole visit. It's
Still doing the same thing you were doing
same
30
thing.
years ago.
You got to constantly. Amazon is really winning.
Yeah.
And so we're going there. But you can take anything off the shelf, and it's like it recognizes you and charges you.
Mm-hmm.
On the way out the door, you don't stop. You
weird.
walk out the door.
Yeah.
I mean, even today, you go to Sam's Club, and you can do everything on your phone, and go to walk out the door. You do show a receipt and leave. You don't even go to a register.
Yeah.
I mean, we're constantly looking at these ideas, and then we try to connect with these people, learn what's the thinking behind all of this, and that's kind of how we look at the visioning, and just say, God, where do we need to be? Where are people? It's really what do customers want today, and where's it moving toward? I mean, Amazon has changed the expectation. So you look at convenience. When I grew up, what was convenience? Well, people started to drive. There was more cars, so you had to have a parking lot. Today, convenience has really pushed to the ultimate. Why don't you bring it to me?
Yeah.
Like Domino's.
Have a drone fly to my house.
Domino's Pizza's killing it right now. They were struggling for years. Now they found the right formula. They've been growing for the last 5 years at double digits because especially millennials love it. They can, obviously order. It's going to be delivered. Convenience right to here.
Yeah.
I can even track where it's at,
Right.
And so they're taking convenience and pushing it back to bring it to me, It could be.
Which is the ultimate convenience.
Absolutely. It could be taking the truck, to the ball game or whatever. But the convenience, the ultimate is, I don't want to go anywhere. You bring it to me what I want, And so we're kind of constantly looking for how we can do that.
So that is the future. That's where we're heading. How do you feel about it? Like, I guess as far as seeing you're a lifelong learner, gone the whole way through from the 60s. Where we're at right now, is it a great place to be in? Is it worse in some situations? There's always a good and a bad.
I think
what's your
it's
favorite
great
part?
from a consumer standpoint because you're going to bring it to me now, and I think our challenge is always that's what we're going to do. We're going to figure out how to do that. If there's one concern I have, even as I look at our grandchildren and the next generation, it's how can we help them get those, not just social skills, but certainly part of it is social skills, part of it is just being able to interact with people eye to eye.
Yeah.
You don't, I shouldn't say you don't have that. Many people do, but
it's going away much more than it's much less prevalent.
It is, and I think about I'm not sure what is the impact of that, long term, but it's definitely people are turning more toward their electronics, and there's not as much interaction. So I don't know what long term what that means.
And I think the same thing. That's part of what I try to when I talk to younger kids. I try to really push that home a lot. Is you're gonna not only is it going to help you in personal development, learning how to talk to people and just understanding the importance of it for yourself and for others, but also it's going to make you better at whatever you do. Because people aren't going to have that skill as much in the next couple generations, right?
Yeah.
It's going to be going more and more away. So the more you practice that, you're going to have a leg up on a lot of people.
Yeah.
Even if you're in a virtual reality world, you can still make eye contact with somebody in the VR headset.
Yeah, make eye contact. And when our people that are graduating, our students graduating, I know I sat down with them, this group this year, and we talked about where they were going, and they were asking. For advice on what should I do? And I said, well, the first 2 years, almost everywhere I've been, you talk about visiting people. I went to Enterprise Car out in St. Louis, one of the largest privately held businesses. $20 billion a year they do. It's family owned.
Really? Enterprise is family owned?
Family owned. They own Alamo. And they took us in. Again, the chairman sat with us the whole morning. He said, I couldn't believe it. And he had his top people there sitting with us. But at any rate, they hire the most people, college graduates every year, 9,000.
Oh, okay.
So we hire 9,000 people, he said. And at the end of 2 years, I will have about 3,500. I said, do you mean you get rid of them? Nope, they leave. It's like a boot camp. And I will have the 3,500 I want. And I said to the students, other people don't call it a boot camp. They do the same thing. Because I know the companies they were going, several of them, they're going to put you through the paces for 2 years because they've hired probably 3 times the number they need, and they're going to push you and they're going to challenge you. Will you do this? And if you go, you're one of the 2 that's gone.
Yeah.
I want you to say, yes, of course I will. That's what they're looking for. The first 2-3 years, you will be challenged in any big company, wherever you go, because they hire more than they need, because they want to weed out the ones who they don't think are going to make it, and they want to hold on to those. You're going to have a positive attitude. You're going to have a can-do attitude. You're going to socialize with people more than the people inside your department, you're going to get to know people outside of the departments as well. And you're going to be a can-do person. Because, enterprise just has this system, boom, boom, boom. The other companies do the same thing. Mm-hmm. They hire more people than they need because they don't know, what's Rob? What's he going to do? Yeah. Show me. And they're going to take 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
And those that make it through, they're going to move up. And those that don't they don't fire them. They just leave on their own because they're not happy.
And that's a powerful thing to spread to the instant gratification generation that I live in, and that's coming up. I have a 3.5, 4-year-old. He has an iPad in his hand. Can carry his TV with him. That sort of stuff. It's amazing. The world they're growing up in is crazy. It's even to me that I grew up half without internet, half with internet.
Yeah.
And just to look at his life of understanding how to use technology at 3 years old blows my mind.
Sure.
So where's it going to be at in 20 years? It's fascinating.
I know. But I tell them, when you go with a company, the last thing they want to hear is when they ask you to do something, I can't do that.
Yeah.
Don't tell me you can't do that. Tell me, yes, I will absolutely do it. I need some assistance. I will do it. The last thing we want to hear is I can't do it. When you say you can't do it, guess what? You're not going to be here.
And like you said, this is America. You can do anything.
You can do anything. You just need support. You may need help, but you can do it. And I want you to say you can do it. And we went through that whole discussion because they're just entering that world. So we sat down in April before they graduated. They all had jobs, which was great, and they'll be successful.
I was going to ask you advice to a 20-year-old you, but I think you answered it already with all of this.
Probably. One of the best things that's happened out of the Sheetz Fellows is, and the record's still intact, and I hope we can keep it going, within 6 months, every one of those students has had a job in the field that they wanted or gone on to school within 6 months, every single one.
I got to sit down it was last year, but I was picked to sit down with the Sheetz Fellows kids and talk to them. Mm-hmm. And it was so much fun. It was like 4 hours of 20-minute conversations.
Yeah, that's the entrepreneur residence program. Yeah.
And I was like, 4 hours? What am I going to do?
I know.
And it blew by. When it was over, I was like, this was amazing. I wanted to keep going. I mean, I was kind of exhausted, but it was really fun. The kids were great to talk to. And I shouldn't say kids, just the guys and girls were great to talk to. And they had some awesome ideas. I still talk to one on a semi-regular basis. The other one I've talked to a couple of times since then. And I got a lot out of it. Because whenever when you're just starting your own business and you get a chance to talk about those sorts of things to somebody else who is getting ready to start their own thing, or who wants to start their own thing, it gives you a lot of motivation. It made me realize, wow, I've come a long way from where I was, and how many of those Sheetz Fellows kids have gone on to do great things? I mean, are going to.
They are, and so the decision we had to make was, when we first started, people didn't know what it was. Back in 2011, you had 6 students, and then 8, 6, Then all of a sudden, this year we had 16 come in, and the sophomore class is 22, and we only wanted 15. I said I funded it for 15. I feel like 15 is the right number, and here comes the demand, and so we've decided we're going to go to 30. Which means more funding, but I had to make sure from my time standpoint and from Donna Bond, who runs it, hers, just to make sure that everybody could handle 30 because we're going to double the number. And we're going to go to 30. I mean,
That's
it's
awesome.
just the people have learned about it, the students, and they love it. I have a girl from Bolivia who already rented her apartment down at State College, already rented it. And some of her fellow students told her about this program. She said, I decided I'd just come and look at it. Mm-hmm. And she said, I loved it. And so now she's staying here. Her mother and father came. We had dinner with them from Bolivia. He's 4th-generation leather maker. Mm-hmm. Now all of a sudden, she's got an apartment here and an apartment down at State College.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm. I had a second student. Her father wanted to have lunch with me Monday. Said, I don't know what you did with this girl, but she's always wanted to go to University Park, and now she's staying here. He said, so I bought a house down by the campus on 26th Avenue.
Really?
So they're staying, which selfishly we kind of hoped that some of them, after they graduated, would stay. Obviously, we need them to stay here 4 years. But even after graduation, obviously we're hoping to hold them. So with 30 coming out a year, we're going to have some great students, and a lot of them I think will stay here and really help build the community.
I'll tell you what, Steve, just being in downtown Altoona with the Entrepreneur Center, with Launchbox, where my studio was initially, with Donna Bond, Steve McKnight and the ABCD Corp, and Catalyst Space, just everybody around here, since I've left my career in radio, which it's been a little over a year now that I've been doing my own thing, I've met so many amazing people in central Pennsylvania, and this podcast could be heard worldwide. Anybody could hear it. Right. But for our area, and I always wanted to leave Altoona. That's always my goal. I got to get out of here. And I'm so glad that I never did, because there are amazing things that are happening here. You have a big part in that, and I'm really just excited now. I've met all these amazing people who are motivated, doing cool things, and I guess the beautiful part now is also with the internet. You don't have to leave to do what you want to do.
Yeah, you know.
And it's so thank you for that. Number one, just for helping people out and for coming on the podcast, and I'm sure you're probably ecstatic to see the area doing what it's doing right now, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, obviously, this is where I've lived all my life, and got a lot of friends. A lot of friends here. And I think there's a lot of support. And I think as these students, another part of the program that I felt was important was going out in the community and given 80 hours of community service. So every Sheetz fellow gives 80 hours of community service. And that puts them in touch with the community leaders and people, and they see the support structure that's out there for them, and they love getting involved. A lot of them, I think, look out and say, 80 hours, I'm going to dread that. Mm-hmm. They don't dread it at all. They love getting out there and helping people and connecting with people. That 80 hours of community service for each of them is just so important, and I think it helps attach them to the community and see the support that we have to offer here in Blair County.
Yeah, I think that should be required at some point. I got in trouble many years ago and had to do some community service, and I got a lot out of it just from the giving back kind of thing that a lot of people are missing in their lives. You don't understand the gratitude you get from, the satisfaction you get from helping somebody else out.
Yeah, this is 80 hours, and they do all kind of different stuff to help people. And I will tell you that I think when they look at it and say, oh boy, I'm going to dread this, and they come away loving it. They love the experience.
Very cool. Well, I love this experience, so thanks for being here.
You bet.
Anything else you want to throw in?
I'm good.
All right. I'm sure you are. All right, Steve Sheetz, part of the podcast for the first time. Is this your first podcast?
Yeah.
Did I get you? Yes.
First
all right.
Podcast, yeah.
Awesome. Ray's first as well a couple of days ago, so I'm on a streak here. All right, Steve, thank you so much for being a part of the show, and have a great day.
Thank you.
Wow, what a powerful episode with Mr. Steve Sheetz. Steve, thank you so much for being a part of the show. Got a shout out to the sponsors, Trade Secrets, 1223 13th Avenue in Altoona. Secrets and Trade on Facebook, TradeSecrets_skincare on Instagram. Natural body care line of products. All research is done in-house. All development is done in-house. These products have no added chemicals or ingredients. Sugar scrubs, bath bars, all natural deodorants, bath bombs, lip balms, whipped body butters, and so much more at Trade Secrets. And Sports Evolution, that's where I go to get my jiu-jitsu on. Alan Coble runs the place. He's a purple belt in Gracie Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. He also teaches youth martial arts. Now, I've been training there for about a year. I've learned so much from Alan. Number one, on how to activate and use muscles in my body that I was never using before, but also learning how to take people out using Jiu-Jitsu. It's so much fun, and it really is not in like a braggy sort of way. It's just a way to get your mind right, get your body right, and to learn self-defense. To be able to defend yourself is a very important skill to have. So I thank Alan for that. Also, he teaches CrossFit, certified personal trainer, certified strength and conditioning specialist. Sports Evolution, 2900 Plank Road, Altoona. SportsEvolution.net is the website. On Facebook and Instagram at Leading Athletes. Steve Sheetz on the podcast. Nobody else in the history of the world has ever been able to say that. How cool is that, right? This is his first podcast ever. So thank you to John Harrell, who linked me up with Steve. Thank you to Steve for having the humbleness, the kindness to come on the show and talk. Much blessings to the Zebras. Thank you.
That's brutal.